Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about Metroid Prime 5, a game that doesn't even exist or hasn't been announced, but a game that I want to talk about nonetheless. Now, Metroid Prime 4 obviously came out to a very mixed reception, and a lot of people weren't happy with it. I, on the other hand, absolutely loved it. It's probably my favourite Metroid Prime game. I like the other games, but I liked it. If you want to go watch, there's plenty of videos up on why I loved it so much. But it did get me thinking about what do you do for a Metroid Prime 5? Where do you go with this series to keep it fresh, but to also, change up things that maybe that people do or do not want? I've compiled there's 5 things here. This isn't obviously an exhaustive list. It's just 5 things that I've been thinking about that I think would massively impact the quality or at least directions that they could go. I have no idea where the game will end up, but these are things that I personally think would add quite a lot to the game, would keep things interesting, would keep things fresh. I do have examples. I'll try and expand on those examples as we go, but that's kind of my thought process right now, so let's get into it. Voice acting is always going to be kind of divisive in a Metroid game. However, I actually really liked the voice acting in Prime 4. I think that's a really good direction. Even if it's less characters, I think voice acting should absolutely stay. But I think the biggest change and the biggest reason why it didn't necessarily gel very well in Prime 4 is that Samus does not speak. And the problem when you have a silent protagonist who's nodding their head and shaking their head and whatever else it is they're doing, you kind of need them to respond in some form or another. Even if Samus has a more, with a helmet on, roboticized voice or something, you need to be able to have these conversations where the person that Samus is interacting with isn't essentially answering and asking their own questions. Say what you want about Miles and some of the other characters, I genuinely enjoyed them, but I really would have loved to seen Samus actually speak to them like a normal person would, and I think you can do that in a Prime game. It doesn't have to be constant. I think you could just have some cutscenes throughout the game where this stuff happens. Samus has always had there's always been some form of talking in Metroid Prime. In the first game, I think it's an AI voice in a helmet that says a couple of lines. But even then, and even the NPC characters that you meet, the aliens and things like that will speak to you in their own language. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that it's English and people can understand it, and that sort of upsets people. If you do it like they did in Dread and they speak in, I'm not sure what language they're speaking, but you can at least got the subtitles popping up, people seem fine with that. But if you're going to have English-speaking voices, have Samus speak. Have them interact with someone. You could have it so that there's maybe a couple of NPCs that they interact with throughout the game. They could be talking to the villain. They could be talking to an AI. There's things you could do there to make it at least interesting. And I think with the right voice actress, you can make a really good, strong-sounding Samus. And I think that's it. It's about having the right voice. Obviously, Other M had an actress for Samus. She didn't sound quite as maybe experienced as I would have liked, so it's kind of finding that, and maybe it's not going to be to everybody's cup of tea, but you imagine Samus actually saying lines to Sylux, or saying lines to Miles, or Hanarabi and stuff in Prime 4, you get better conversations. It instantly elevates those situations. We don't want to be cheesy writing from Samus. Samus doesn't have to say lots. She could basically give off very almost standoffish kind of discussions or answers, but she obviously cares about people. She's worked with the Federation throughout these games, so why not have that? We see her human side in her actions, but how does she interact with someone who's more nerdy, someone who's more stoic, someone who's a bit more chaotic? Some of the stuff she has with Hanarabi, where he's talking about his religion and stuff, are super interesting. It would be cool to see that. Maybe she only speaks when she pops the helmet off. Maybe that happens once in the game or something. But you can definitely take voice acting to another level and have that be a part of the game without being too much. Because you don't want to take away from the isolation feeling. I get that. But you can definitely have moments in the game where you get these conversations. Maybe they're a 10-minute cutscene. Maybe they're not. Maybe that somebody dials in over comms once in a while and you can talk when you find something. Maybe it's just before a boss fight. There's things you can do with this to actively make it good voice casting, and I think having Samus have a voice rather than just a silent protagonist would help massively. Next up, I'm going to suggest vehicle sections. Now, this is probably going to upset some people because a lot of people didn't like the desert and the bike, and that's not really what I'm thinking you do with a Prime 5. Here's my thought process on what you do with vehicle sections. Is in Prime 1 and Prime 2, you obviously use the elevators and the lifts to get from area to area, to like symbolize, you know, connections and stuff like that. What I think you could do is almost take, like, you know, it doesn't have to be circular, but there could be routes to and from area to area. There might be multiple routes, like say you've got an area in the middle and you've got 2 different routes you can go out to zone 1, one side takes you to zone 3, you know, that kind of thing. But I think you could make them short 2-minute, like, quick vehicular sections of you bombing along in a buggy or a bike or some kind of powered, like, land speeder thing, to and from, with like jumps and all that sort of stuff, and also different biomes. Because I think the problem is when you're riding in the desert in Prime 4, it does look very samey and gets very boring very quickly, and I appreciate that. But I don't think the vehicle sections being on the bike were bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it handles fairly well. I think it's fun. It's fairly quick. So why not try something with that again, but in a different way? Like, because going up a lift into like an elevator is like, I get it, it's just a cutscene of Samus on it. So why not make it interactable? Okay, so you've got a bomb along like a coast. So you're going for like a beach coast, and there's some rocks you can jump over, and there's some like trees, and you've got like water-based enemies coming at you, and like you can shoot them on the bike or whatever vehicle you're in, and then you get to the other side. And I don't know, maybe there's like a couple of pickups along the way, like, you know, an energy tank or something that, you know, you come back later, you can blow stuff up off a big rock and get like a power bomb tank. I think that the vehicle stuff is a cool idea, and I think it acts, if you've got go-betweens, these, like, I guess they would be kind of corridor-ish. I'm totally fine with that because it's different and new, and it's far more interesting than just having lifts. And then whatever that vehicle transport is, could be a little, like a hover jet thing or whatever. Just make them fun, fast-paced. No more than 2 minutes. You know, maybe even shorter than that, I don't know. But do something that's fun, that's interactable, that can lead to getting, you know, scanning stuff, that can lead to having items be around the area. Maybe you can see stuff, you know, stuff flying overhead. You can see like story things happening while you're driving to and from these places. I think you could really do a lot with having like vehicle sections. I mean, sure, you might have like a boss that you know, that you're on the vehicle and fighting. Definitely better than the one that is in Prime 4, where you're in the desert and you have to fight that big landfish thing. That's not great. You do have the lava guy. That's pretty decent. But maybe you can do like a, you know, a hover tank or something just different to mix it up. But ultimately, instead of having one massive area that you drive from that people didn't like, why not have smaller, shorter areas that allow you to use a vehicle that have these collectibles and scannables, and you travel back and forth from, but they're not, you know, they're not meant to be super difficult. They're meant to just be fun, like bombing over jumps, or like really nice like landscapes, being able to look out and as you're doing it. I think that would really go a long way, because then you're like, okay, you're letting the areas have these exits to different areas so you can get to and from places, but you're not just standing on a lift and watching Samus going up and down a lift. You know, you're actually adding a gameplay element to it. And as long as you don't do it, like, if you're playing through the story, as long as you're not mandatorily making people go back and forth like unnecessary amounts, because that'll be up to the player then. If you just have like a crypt path that you go through, and maybe you go on some of them a couple times each and that's it, I think that could work very well, and I would like that. I think that it was something that made Prime 4 very interesting. Like, when you're out in the desert and there isn't a lot going on, and then suddenly stuff pops out the desert, or like here you can have whatever the locale is like have stuff happen that's relevant to that type of area and that type of biome. I think it would be quite kind of fun. I think it's a change that would at least be interesting, along as the areas you're going to also are fairly interesting. I think it's about time as well that Metroid Prime does do a bit of a shake-up with some of the abilities. Now, that's not to say that there wasn't stuff added to the abilities in Prime 4, but in the next Prime game, in Prime 5, I think you need to make some bigger changes. So I've written down some examples. Obviously, I haven't fleshed these out. These are just some examples of things that might help in combat and or puzzles, potentially. So, for example, In Prime 4, you've got the psychic glove that allows you to pull like those balls and stick them into like doors. Why not have like a north-south magnetic push-pull kind of thing, or like something that works like that, where you can, you have to push things and make them push away from each other, or they stick to each other. Have these objects that could be magnetic or maybe not magnetic, maybe just some kind of alien alloy that you can interact with in a way that it's like, maybe you pull stuff out the wall to make platforms, maybe you on a boss have to pull certain parts off of it or pull a bit off and stick it somewhere else. You could use it for puzzles. I think you kind of take the idea of the psychic glove, but you run with it in a slightly different style and you make it far more interactable with what you can do for it, so that it does work against bosses and enemies and puzzles and stuff like that. That's something I think you could do. A melee attack is something that there's nothing new. I think people have specifically talked about having a melee counter or something like that in this game. I think I would go with like a melee punch, but maybe have it so that you latch onto an enemy and you pull yourself forward, and Samus does like a big long falcon punch thing that maybe does a lot of damage. Maybe it's like has a cooldown on it. Maybe you use it for bosses to like smack the weak point. I think having some kind of melee thing, maybe smack a boulder out the way, like you can power it up. Something that you can use, because my idea is that obviously these become pieces of puzzles as well as combat, so you want to use it for both. But yeah, maybe you can knock things out of the way, open up new areas. You could like push things, break things, knock things over, and then in fights you could latch onto something and push it. I think that would kind of work rather than a specific counter in a 3D game, just like a sort of a flying punch to hit things, and like the further away the more you generate power kind of thing. Something you could do to morph mode, specifically a morph ball, is add a dig/drill ability. So maybe there's like points in the game where you like, I don't know, spin and like either whatever you make a field around you that kind of like digs around. So maybe you can go like digging into like sand or digging into like the walls to either find, to pass through a new area or to find items hidden. Something that is like can be used, and then you can use it on a boss as well. Like, oh, you drill into the boss, you go around a little maze to get to its center, put down a bomb, blows up, you fly out, like that kind of thing. Like, I don't think it's like drastically different to some other things that the morph balls had, but I like the idea that, yeah, okay, now I can drill into the walls and make my own paths, or I can drill into a boss, or some enemies you need to drill underneath them and then pop up and hit them, like boost ball into them or something. Stuff like that. Just something that you could use to make morph mode have like an extra ability or a very different ability in this game. And then the last thing I sort of came up with and thought about was using grapple to climb vertically. What say, like, we'll come on to like locales and biomes in a bit, but let's say just one of the examples I've got is a mountain. Why not be able to like grapple your way up a mountain and climb it, and then you have like, you're on the edge of a mountain and there's caves and stuff, but you can climb, you can pull yourself up, it's not just swinging around, it's like, oh, I can literally latch onto an edge and pull myself up to things and actually create a vertical areas of stuff like that would be kind of cool. I think that's something that they've not done. Like, grapple's great. I love the idea of grapple and grapple lasso and grapple beam. I can grab onto an enemy and pull something off, or I can grab onto this like notch and swing from it. Alright, well, how about we go up now? How about we actually allow me to grab onto things above me and pull myself up and climb? I think that would be super cool. It allows for that verticality, which would be something new in a Prime game. There are many ideas that you can probably come up with. I think that having some big changes would go a long way. Weirdly enough, Metroid Dread added a slide in, and a slide doesn't sound like a lot because you've got Morph Ball, but it keeps the momentum going, and that was like one of the coolest things that got added into a game like that. So I think that's really awesome. But there are many things you could do with Samus's kit. This is just the ideas I've had, and I'm like already going, oh, that could be used for boss fight puzzle enemies or like whatever. They've always got to have that act of the key slash, so it's like puzzle slash combat, right? And I think all the ones I've suggested here would be kind of good for that. Let's talk about the biomes, because I did mention like a cave thing. I think most Prime games do very well at giving good biomes. The first game has a lot of those, the second game definitely. The third game I haven't seen as much of, but there are some fun ones, like the place with the sky rail, stuff like that. Personally, I think that Vault Forge from Prime 4 is incredible. I think that the Ice Belt one was also good, and then the mines specifically had a very unique mechanic. All very cool, but what we really need is some big differences. Things that are not your typical Metroid in terms of the biomes or in terms of the alien races you deal with. So, for example, we've had ruins before. We've had like, you know, Chozo ruins, places like that. I have this idea that you could have a blown up city. A bomb's gone off. Something's happened to this ruined city. And it's more like, you know, buildings have fallen over. There's, you know, broken roads. Kind of like, you know, like if a bomb went off in like Fallout or something like that. But obviously it'd be alien tech. It would look alien and whatnot. Or you could do it for a civilization for the Galactic Federation. Could be like a base or something they've had. But like blown up, completely abandoned, like there's weird stuff going on. Maybe there's radiation, the enemies are a bit screwed up. Maybe it's like zombie humans, I don't know. But like a blown up city, blown up facility, fairly big facility that looks, you know, creepy to go around. Lots of places to morph ball in, to like go up and under things. I think that would be really fun, having that kind of environment. Something that is kind of different would be a tropical beach / sort of jungle. Now, we had a lot of forests in Prime games, but why not have like a beach, like thunderstorm, raining kind of beach area with like aquatic parts to it and like jungle parts to it? That would be kind of cool, because then you've got like a new flavor of like being on like a beach and dealing with stuff like there. It would maybe look a little bit out of place, but I think with a lot of foliage you could make that work. And then lastly, I said mountains and caves. I think a mountainous area where you go into caves in a mountain and it's like a network of things and you're climbing up to the top to whatever is up there. I think that would be really cool. And it could start off like maybe like you could do it so it's like cold as you get further up. It could get hotter as you get further up. It depends if it's like a volcano or maybe it's a volcano in an ice place. I don't know. You could kind of do multiple things with it. But I like the idea of having that verticality. I think that would be really, really cool for something like Metroid. Again, there's a lot they could do, and like I said, Vault Forge was really cool, I thought, and same with Ice Belt, and then you've got things like Chozo Ruins and like the wreck ship and stuff. Like, there's plenty of things that already exist in the Metroid universe, but there's also so many other things you could do, and some of these ideas that I've mentioned, especially sort of blown up city, I think that would be super cool, exploring that, and very creepy as well. So that brings me to my last point, and that is the main villain. Assuming that it's Psylux again, I don't know, but let's say that Prime 5, they're going to use Psylux. I think there needs to be a very different use of Psylux this time around. I think what I would do with him is have him pop up more in the game, in terms of either maybe he spawns in certain places for random fights, or you make it so that he's taunting Samus a lot through the game through some kind of voice comm or something that's around, or certain parts of the game where he pops up and he's just like, I'm gonna kill you or whatever. I also quite like the idea that he would do like a bit of a Mr. X from Resident Evil, where like he could be in the area and you can avoid him, but he might, if he hears you, he comes over and tries to fight with you, and you have to like stun him or like put him down, you know, until you're powerful enough to actually fight him. I think he could be very cool. I like the fact, like, the thing with Psylux I liked was that here is another person with power armor who could fight with similar abilities. He's got a morph ball mode, he's got different types of guns, he's got all these different powers like Samus has. It, you know, it makes that kind of level playing field. Maybe by the end of the game he's like, you know, evolved, become this bigger thing, whatever, but having like that 1v1 kind of human interaction, I think would be super cool. If anyone's played Borderlands 2, Handsome Jack style of him communicating with you throughout the game at different points, I'd be totally cool with that, because then it would be like him taunting you, telling him that, you know, on certain areas what he's going to do when he finds you, all that sort of stuff. I think you can make him a proper hunter, him trying to track you down and get in your way. He might not even be the main villain. It might be that you're dealing with like actual Metroids or Moctroids and stuff like that, and creatures that have been infected by them, but he keeps showing up throughout the game, being an absolute nuisance, and like every area you go to, you're trying to, you know, you're either choosing to fight him or ignore him, and maybe those fights give you like extra tanks of energy or something, but if you choose to ignore him, you like, it's an easier time. So there's kind of like things you could do with him if he is going to continue to be the villain. If he isn't the villain, those ideas still kind of apply to somebody getting in your way, tracking you down, being a pain. I quite like that, because it means you have more interaction, more reasons for Samus to speak, you know, and ultimately I feel like Psylux is probably going to be the villain for 3 games, and if you're going to do him for this one, and you've obviously teleported off planet for the last one, he's going to be tracking you down. I think that would be kind of fun, him trying to find you throughout the game and fight you and deal with you, basically. So that's kind of all my points and stuff that I would like to see in a Prime 5 game. I know that maybe some of the stuff that I'm saying here that either nobody cares about or they definitely disagree with, and that's fine. Feel free to put that down in the comment section if you agree. If you have your own ideas, feel free to put them down there as well, because I'm kind of curious what people want to see. I will say this, I do not want to see Prime 5 just be Metroid Prime 1. No matter how many people love Prime 1, and I definitely think it's a great game, I'm not looking for a repeat of these experiences. All 4 Prime games do something different, for better or for worse. That's good. I want to see Prime 5 do different things. These are some suggestions that I think would be kind of interesting to explore. Whether they work out, I don't know. But for me personally, I'm not looking for every game to be the same. They all have different hooks and things like that. And I think we're at a point now where wherever a Prime 5 does come out, we could do with a bit of a shake-up again. We can look at what worked and what didn't work for Prime 4, maybe what worked in the other games, but it still needs its own identity going forward. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Helps out a ton. If you want to see more content on any of the Metroid stuff, then hit subscribe, stick around, and until next video, I will see you then.